Hey guys, it's Valentine. Welcome to another video. Today we're going to speak about Necromunda Hired Gun, some of my thoughts after playing the game for a week, and what you should know about the game if you're thinking of getting it. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. On this channel we speak about gaming, tech and Warhammer. So if that's something that you like, make sure you subscribe down below. Be great to see how quickly we can grow this channel to 1,000 subscribers. Without further ado, let's get right into the video and see whether this game is worth buying. Necromunda Hired Gun is a game that was developed by Stremon Studio and published by Focus Home Interactive that was released on the 1st of June. Set within the sprawling Warhammer 40k universe, specifically on the hive world of Necromunda, the game is a fast-paced, first-person action shooter in the vein of Doom. Now, whilst the overall story does take a back seat throughout the game, the premise is that you play as a mercenary that takes on different criminal gangs that live in the Underhive, whilst you embark on a mission to find out who betrayed you. The overall setting for the game is actually one of the standout features for me, especially as I'm a massive fan of the Warhammer 40k universe, and even then, the setting of Necromunda is definitely different from the usual Space Marine cathedral-esque spaceship battle aesthetic that most people actually associate with Warhammer 40k, and with Necromunda, you definitely get more grittier, darker, industrial vibe. Now visually, Hired Gun, it looks okay, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. But at the same time, playing the game on my PS5, I would definitely have a hard time convincing you that this is a next-gen game. Now, the lighting and some of the more impressive visual set pieces, they do look great a lot of the time, but if I'm honest, the graphics are average, especially with a lot of the textures, they do let down the overall graphic sort of impression that you get of the game. I was also disappointed that the developers didn't take advantage of the new next-gen features on the DualSense controllers on the PS5, such as the adaptive triggers for firing guns, for example. Now, moving on to the gameplay side of things, and this is where it does get a little bit more interesting. Now, the story isn't really gripping, as you would hope in such a cool and unique setting, with most missions just blurring into one. And you do have an intermission hub called Martyr's End, and essentially where you can choose your next mission, do side quests, and also purchase different abilities, weapons, and upgrades. And more importantly, you can even pet your pet Cyber Mastiff dog. Now, the gameplay itself is fast and ferocious, just as you expect Doom to have, and you have access to some really cool game mechanics like wall running and grapple hooks, which you can move around and actually have some really cool and fun encounters. Now, while the game isn't based around them as such, it does actually make a nice contrast from your usual gunplay, and it actually means you can approach some encounters in a couple of different unique ways. I just wish that these mechanics were actually utilised more by the developers. They're actually really cool, and they don't actually feel fundamental to the game, and at some points you don't even need to use them. Now, a small little disclaimer before I get deeper into some of the issues I actually encountered is I actually played this game on my PS5. So some of the things I experienced may not necessarily be true on the PC or the Series X, for example. I didn't really experience any game-breaking bugs as such, but throughout the whole time playing Hired Gun, there was constant little things here and there that ruined my sort of total immersion in the game. One of my main gripes is the takedowns that you do in Hired Gun. Comparing it to Doom and the glory kills that you perform in that game, the premise is roughly the same with takedowns in Hired Gun. However, the implementation is anything but the same. Starting with really clunky animation, so every time you do a takedown, it takes you into a little scripted, almost cutscene-like event where you kill the enemy either by stabbing or shooting them. Once you are performing a takedown on an enemy, even if there are multiple other enemies around you, they'll just stand and stare at you, and you're actually immune from taking any other damage. And the other silly thing I found was that even if you're out of ammo and you need to reload and you go into a takedown sequence, it will still show your character and the animation of you firing your gun and killing the enemy, even if there's no bullets actually in the gun. Now, these gripes, they may sound trivial, and at first it doesn't really affect the gameplay much. However, it really does affect your immersion in the game, and the takedowns are nowhere near satisfying as the glory kills in Doom, and in some ways they actually do feel a little bit tagged on, as if the game was designed without them and then added in at the last minute. Overall, the enemy AI does seem a bit centered around it, just shooting at you with no tactics or thought behind it, and almost just lining up in a queue waiting for you just to kill them. Fundamentally, that kind of AI is not something you would expect in a next-gen game released in 2021.
Whilst the game does run pretty smoothly at nice 60 FPS, my PS5 version for some reason does have little game stutters every now and then, which for a next gen game is pretty inexcusable in my eyes. And another issue that occurred at launch was that aiming was a little bit clunky and buggy, but credit to the developers, they have mentioned it and it is a known issue and they are working on a patch to fix it. With the story being very bland and it being almost an excuse for you just to go around killing different enemy factions, a lot of my interest in the game was actually carried by the fact that this was a Warhammer 40,000 game and that we're exploring the 40k universe. And for me, personally, this is actually one of the biggest issues with Necromunda Hired Gun. The game leans heavily on the 40k universe to build atmosphere and some sort of coherency within the story, but it just doesn't do the amazing world of 40k justice. The developers have tried to showcase a newer side of the 40k universe, which gives Hired Gun quite a unique edge, and it's actually one of my favourite bits about the game. Some of the locations look really cool, and you can see that the developers put a lot of time and effort into the design aspect of the game. However, if you were to take out the Warhammer 40,000 IP out of Hired Gun, then fundamentally you'd be left with an unremarkable and buggy first-person shooter that is fun to play, but one that doesn't grip you and make you want to keep on playing. Yes, there are some RPG-like mechanics that give the game a unique twist, but overall, the gunplay of Hired Gun is deeply average, and it doesn't give you the same punch as you get from Doom, for example. And I feel that if you're not a Warhammer 40k fan, you actually may get bored of the setting, and you'll have no real stimulus to keep playing because the missions themselves are quite boring and there's no real variety to them. For me as well, the voice acting in this game does not fit the vibe at all and actually ruins a lot of the world building and makes the character actually not fit into the gritty 40k environment. And when you couple that with some of the audio mix issues that were prevalent at launch of the game, it's a real shame because the game does lean really heavily on the 40k setting, and those little things definitely detract from the overall experience. And again, that's just more annoying as the gameplay doesn't really make up for that shortfall, which does sour your experience quite a bit. Overall, I think if some of the rough edges were polished up a bit, such as the jankiness and takedowns and enemy AI, then it would definitely improve the overall experience of the game, and I'm sure the developers will put out patches to improve those said things. On the surface, the game is fun to play, and that's the main thing. If you were to get a game, load it up and start playing, there is fun to be had, and after all, that's why we all play games, to have fun. It's just that there's not much substance to that fun outside of that 40k universe. And whilst there are little cool additions in the game that give a cool exciting new edge, when you scratch under that surface, the gameplay does feel very samey over the course of the game and doesn't really change up, so overall the game does stagnate a bit for me as the more you play. If you're a Warhammer 40k fan, you definitely will have more to take away from this release. Now I'm not saying that you won't like it if you're not a fan, but I think you would be more likely to look past some of the shortfalls and keep playing, especially with the storyline being so unremarkable as it is.
So there you guys go. Those are my thoughts on Necromunda Hired Gun. I honestly do think that the Warhammer IP is carrying this release quite a bit. Without that Warhammer IP behind it, I do think the actual caliber of this release would be a lot less. There's not much story to it, just the whole setting and the fact that it's a 40k universe, I think does work to its favour. Nevertheless, as I said, there's quite a few good bits to the game, and I'm looking forward to seeing what updates the developer does, as I do think there needs to be a couple of quality of life improvements made to the game just so it's more enjoyable. So thanks for watching this video. Leave a comment down below if you're going to get the game, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.